Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're going to deconstruct the minimalist architecture of a completely everyday object, a simple, blank composition notebook. You know, we take these things totally for granted, right? But I promise you, by the end of this, you'll never look at a blank page the exact same way again.
So let's just dive right in. Before a single pen stroke is even made on the page, we really have to look at this empty space and ask ourselves a fundamental question. How much structure does a thought actually need? I mean, we usually think of a blank notebook as total, uninhibited freedom. But is it really? Think about how just the mere presence of printed lines, margins, and metadata fields subconsciously shapes our ideas. It's actually more like a guided freedom.
Our journey actually begins on the very first page. And honestly, it isn't a gentle introduction at all. It's this stark, commanding landscape that practically demands specific pieces of information from you before it even grants you entry. It operates almost like a contract. You literally have to introduce yourself to the architecture of the book before you can use the space inside.
And look at what it's asking for. It strictly demands your identity, your name, and a very specific temporal coordinate, the year. By demanding these two exact data points, the notebook is drawing a line in the sand. This isn't just scrap paper for temporary scribbles, no way. It immediately establishes itself as a formal historical document of the self.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Notice the profound visual shift that happens the second we turn the page. The rigid, bold sans serif demands of that title page, which feel, almost bureaucratic, they instantly give way to this elegant, flowing cursive of the interior header. It's a complete transition from a strict gatekeeper to a welcoming host, basically inviting your thoughts to flow just as smoothly.
So in its purest essence, we've got to stop viewing this object as simply bound paper. What we're actually looking at is a highly specialized physical framework. It's basically analog technology made up of horizontal constraints and temporal metadata, specifically engineered to capture and organize human consciousness. When you reframe it like an interface like that, the genius of its simplicity really starts to shine through.
Let's look a little closer at the interior structure. Right there at the top corner, we find this understated yet absolutely vital prompt for a date. It's fascinating because that little line is a tether. It grounds every single chaotic, abstract thought you record to an exact moment in physical reality. It ensures that no matter how wild your imagination gets on the page, it is forever anchored to a specific day in your life. And right below that sparse metadata lies the true core feature of the whole shebang, a relentless, uniform grid. We're talking about an invisible grid of constraints. These horizontal lines dictate the literal vertical size of your letters, the spacing of your paragraphs, and the overall rhythm of your words. They're essentially providing the tracks upon which your train of thought has to run. But what truly gives this everyday object its meditative, almost overwhelming power is its volume. We're given precisely 25 consecutive, perfectly identical pages of untouched potential. That exact repetition completely removes the anxiety of the unknown. You know exactly what's coming next, which totally frees up your cognitive load to focus entirely on your ideas.
Let's flip ahead a bit. As we hit page 5, the sheer uniformity of the layout becomes incredibly apparent. The architecture here doesn't shout at you. Instead, it hums in the background. It becomes this steady, rhythmic heartbeat of blank canvas that is just patiently waiting to be filled.
Moving on to page 10, the exact same flowing header and rigid dateline greet us again. And you start to realize the profound comfort in this absolute consistency. For a wandering, highly active mind, this predictable structure is a safety net. It's quietly saying, hey, I'm going to hold your thoughts exactly the same way I did yesterday. And by the time we advance to page 15, the accumulation of all this negative space creates an undeniable sense of anticipation. It's like a sustained pause in a piece of music. The empty lines are highly charged. They're practically begging you to interact with them. Which brings us to this absolutely beautiful tension. On one side, you have these pristine, strictly parallel lines. And on the other, the inherently messy, chaotic human experiences that are destined to be scribbled all over them. I mean, life doesn't happen in perfect rows, right? Emotions, epiphanies, frantic to-do lists, they're messy. Yet we take that chaos and pour it right into this perfect geometric grid. It's a fascinating collaboration between the designer's order and the user's chaos. And finally, as we arrive at the very last page of our guided tour through this structured void, the architecture remains completely resolute. It hasn't tired out, it hasn't changed its formatting at all. It is silently, patiently waiting for your ultimate entry. It stands ready to hold the very last thought of whatever project you started way back on page 1. So we've deconstructed the metadata, the psychology behind the typography, and those hidden constraints of the horizontal lines. Now that you understand the invisible, meticulously designed architecture that's guiding your hand, the ball is entirely in your court. The structure is set. The history is waiting to be archived. The only remaining question to ask yourself is, how will you choose to fill this infinite canvas? Think about that the next time you pick up a pen. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the design of the world around you.